I was thinking for topic like this about the TC2 community, I would have made some sort of dramatic intro where I would cue the jazz music and sort of just go with how this whole thing is going on. But this situation is really bad for our community and it needs to be addressed as soon as possible. The situation that I'm going to be talking about is the one of Icebergs, also known as Ice Haha, who is one of the many veteran members of the TC2 community, while also being a contributor for the game. People like Icebergs in the TC2 Discord server have a specific role to differentiate themselves from others, that being the long-time members role. While, from an outsider's perspective, this might seem a pretty normal way to honor veterans of a mostly niche community, ironically, longtime members are notorious for putting our community in a negative light for a long time, without ever getting the consequences. This, however, ends today. It's time to look at the document made about Icebergs, what really happened, and what truly hides behind TC2's biggest corruption scheme. Strap in. On September 13th of 2023, a TC2ber known as Keno Beans would tweet about a document made about icebergs. Just to clarify, because I know that some people got confused, Beans did not make the document, rather a person by the name of Icy. I don't know exactly who Icy is, and honestly I've tried looking the person up, but to no avail. So since I'm unaware of what Icy's pronouns are, I'm gonna go with they, them. In this document, Icy would describe the interactions that he had with Icebergs. Icebergs going by she, her pronouns. I think, I'm not really sure about that. And the document points out at Iceberg calling him a groomer and someone who made and sent NSFW to Icy. We're gonna be looking into every single piece, every single segment, and then we'll finally reach a verdict. And after reaching said verdict, we'll be able to look at why there's a bunch of corruption in the TC2 community. For starters, we need to look at what was going on before Icy and Icebergs even had a relationship. There isn't that much in the beginning except a few instances of Icebergs' very strange behavior and also 2 instances of him saying the N-word. One of the 2 being the only one that I can somewhat quote, because the second one is a wall of text so big that would make Deller cry out of joy.
You have my attention.
You walked out.
So here's the one that I can actually quote. What do you mean acting like a... I'm just goofing around. Yes, very fun quote. I might put it in a wall somewhere when I get to France. Now, of course, there are gonna be people thinking, oh, damn, this is clearly a joke. Ice isn't, in fact, racist. And to that I have to tell you that unfortunately, saying a fuck ton of slurs in a message out of complete nowhere is not only not a joke, but also not funny. This could possibly be considered ever so slightly a joke if Icebergs was either a black person or Mexican. Don't ask me the source for the second option, you'll end up insane. But it's just Icebergs being Icebergs. He's just being a bit edgy. Let the edgy boy be the edgy boy. It's not like Icebergs later on had inappropriate conversations with Icy while also making NSFW drawings of her. Later on in the document, Icy would describe that after they broke up with their ex, Icebergs would try already to ask Icy out, and they rightfully rejected at first. And going by what Icy is telling us in the document, Icebergs seemed to be fine with getting rejected. But this would later become an issue because Icebergs would start DMing Icy drawings of her persona gender bent, and also making drawings of Iceberg's persona doing vor, to which, by the way, Icy never consented to. Furthermore, Icy would talk about the several instances of Icebergs drawing vor art of her own persona, which most of them include Icy's persona as a second character. But one of the drawings of Icebergs would include Icy doing fellatio. Meanwhile, if you look at the images, Icebergs always considered these as silly art. Yeah, honestly, I agree. They're just silly drawings. Clearly not a very easy way to understand that Icebergs has a fetish and an obsession over a friend of hers. It's just silly. So with the informations that we have at hand, we can already notice that Icebergs had inappropriate conversations with Icy even before they had a relationship. So it'd only be obvious that Icebergs would get worse once they did. After establishing their relationship and promising to mostly keep it private, Icebergs would later become more vocal about his vor fantasies and obsessions she had for Icy. You can see it from the screenshots here that he always changed topic to either wanting to eat Icy or to fuck her, saying things like, "I'm not hungry, and if I was, you'd probably be on the menu." Me when there's nothing on the desk. What the fuck? If you're wondering, the image that is cropped right now because I don't want you to show what the fuck is going on, that is Icy's persona getting bored by icebergs. "I thought it said sex time. I'm still horny from earlier, sorry." When you're with a girl that's so sexy, it's hard to hide it. I guess you're getting comfortable with getting eaten by ice. You know, reading all of this makes me kind of realize that maybe we truly have failed as a generation. Oh, but get this, you'll love this one. You know how icebergs did one drawing of Icy doing fellatio and another where they got bored by icebergs? Well, during this relationship, icebergs also decided to make a drawing of both things at the same time. Isn't that so beautiful? So beautiful that it makes me want to delete the entire state of France. And also, once again, he mentioned that it's silly art. Because of course, vor art is silly and not a fetish. Here's another thing though. In one of the screenshots, icebergs would once again talk about his vor fetish completely out of nowhere and said this. "Part of me wish I never knew about it, otherwise you were also into it. The other, oh my god, this grammar is fucking garbage. The other just wish it didn't exist. It's complicated, mixed feelings, guilty pleasure." So on one hand, Iceberg says how he wished he never knew about this fetish, yet also says that he hoped that Icy would get into it, while also saying it's a guilty pleasure for her. This pretty much goes to show that Icebergs was clearly trying to make Icy understand and tolerate his vor fetish as something normal, when it's very clear that Icy wasn't into it. Look at this conversation where Icy sent a meme and then out of nowhere Ice says, "I'm still feeling a bit kinky. Can you help me? I need a hand or two down there. I'd do very silly stuff with you if opportunity was given. Very silly suckies." I didn't know being silly meant being a sex addict. Let me add that to the Urban Dictionary. Now, of course, for any normal person, this would come off as very creepy from Iceberg's end, since it's pretty clear that in Icy's responses that they didn't want anything to do with Icebergs, and she was the one forcing it.
"But Dance, they continued talking to her. It's their fault if they kept on going, you dumbass."
Oh, really? Like if Icy didn't make it obvious themselves in the document that they continued on because they didn't want to upset Icebergs. Oh, my bad, of course. Oh man, how could I have been so dense? Of course, people who are uncomfortable actually manage to normally tell someone who's clearly on their fetish meds 24/7 to stop. Fat fucking chance. Thankfully, however, once Icy got in contact with one of their friends, Icy decided to break up with Icebergs while specifying that they don't want anything to do with her anymore. And so that would be the end of their conversations. Except that I'm lying, since a month later, Icebergs would try to talk to Icy again. Of course, Icy wasn't having any of it, telling Icebergs to leave them alone, and then out of complete nowhere, Iceberg says this. "Oh, alright, my fault for trying to make things better with everyone. I don't understand why you want to oh my fucking god, Icebergs. I don't understand why you wanted to disassociate with me so bad. I thought it was over, but clearly not." Iceberg suddenly makes this whole story about her trying to make things better, while also stating that she doesn't understand why Icy doesn't want anything to do with her. I don't know if you know this, Icebergs, but when you're trying to make things better, you need to know what you're trying to fix to make said things better. And going from how we saw the previous conversations, it's pretty obvious that Icebergs doesn't consider making NSFW fetish art of Icy as a valid reason. After all, it's just silly art. What do you mean she's acting like a degenerate? She's just goofing around. So, after thoroughly looking at the document and the conversations that took place, it's pretty obvious that this sort of behavior, coming from someone like a long-time member, which is a relevant person within the TCT community, is unacceptable and is worthy of a ban. Which is what actually happened hours after the release of Bean's tweet. Icebergs would get banned from the TC2 Discord server, hopefully never to be seen again. But then, 2 days later after the ordeal, Icebergs would get a silent unban and would come back without any sort of statement made beforehand. Now, looking at this, with all the information that we've gathered before, this out of nowhere unban seems unjustified and very worrying for a community like TC2's. And that's because it is. So how did it still happen? Well, I've got my answers for you. During this shitfest of a situation, a few longtime members and even moderators have spoken up in defense of icebergs before and after the unban. Let's first tackle on one of the longtime members that was already in defense of icebergs, Darky FaZe. In the TC2 wiki server, Darky came up in defense of icebergs regarding the label Icy gave her, which is groomer. But of course, Darky FaZe put up her defense in the only way Darky FaZe can, which is sounding absolutely schizo while not actually making any comprehensive points.
I think you're retarded. It takes 2 seconds of reading and cross-checking with ICE themselves that this Google Doc smells like shit. Just a half-assed attempt to try and out Icy for being horny. No grooming whatsoever. As someone who was actually groomed when I was a minor, the fact they're pulling the groomer and non-consent card out on ICE is downright disgusting.
Incredible to see how you call someone's fair take on icebergs retarded, yet you sound no different to an actual retard. And also, what the fuck is this? Hashtag free ice? You did not just spend 170 funds for a name tag as a way to protest a ban on a fetish artist, who's also coincidentally your friend. You're not even using the correct melee. You should be using the fire extinguisher. At least that has some ice.
Yeah, guys, if you read then cross-check while having ICE on a call, telling you every time it was a joke and that Icy isn't the victim, you can see how this doc is dog shit. Also, I am someone who actually got groomed, so of course I know what I'm talking about.
You do realize that getting groomed doesn't mean having a degree on what's grooming or not, right? Like, you're just fucking with me, right? You're just fucking with me. But whatever, right? This is just a simple complaint of a longtime member that is simply biased for their friend that has a fetish and doesn't know what empathy means. It's not like it's gonna be used as a reason for other longtime members and moderators to downplay the whole situation or anything. However, before icebergs was unbanned, there was an actual fair point made by another member of the TC2 wiki, the person in question being Dona. In a quote tweet of the document, Dona said the following: "Heads up, 15 and 16-year-old, same age, not grooming. What they said was wrong, but the other part was completely open with iceberg sending them that stuff. This is a good point on one thing and one thing only, that iceberg isn't a groomer. Since the age gap between her and Icy is only 1, under no circumstance do the conversations that took place equate to grooming. However, it rather results in icebergs still being overly obsessive and manipulative about the relationship, with also the fact that the drawings are real. So even if iceberg is not a groomer, the art that she made is still a reason on why she should stay banned, with once again pointing out that Icy had stated that they didn't want anything to do with it, but they didn't want to upset icebergs. This part of the video is to address the problems that many people have with the TC2 community and how the community is part of a very big corruption scheme. This was happening during the 16th of September when icebergs would get silently unbanned by Blockhead and Slugger. Of course, when I saw icebergs coming back into the community without any sort of statement, I was very doubtful that it was genuine. So when icebergs decided to speak up in the content discussion channel, I was just simply shunned. And I simply stated that I guess the rules don't exist for longtime members, which is true by the way. Then after a while, I would have a conversation with Blockhead talking about how since he's a moderator of the TC2 Discord server and going off as an unban for someone that was accused of making vor art of someone without being consented to, I only said that they should probably look into the case a bit more instead of making conclusions that iceberg is entirely guilt-free. To which Blockhead also said, "I wouldn't say Ice is entirely guilt-free either. The racism in the document that was put in there for the sole purpose to drag her reputation more through the mud is unexcusable, and she's taking responsibility for it." Now, Blockhead, I just want to tell you, I am not going to point anything against you, because out of all the moderators of the TC2 Discord server, you seem to be the most reasonable. But I'm gonna tell you, just the 2 screenshots of the wall of text of N-words and Ice talking about goofing around isn't the main point of the document. I genuinely think that you should probably look into the document by yourself and not with your other friends that might probably convince you to another story that isn't actually what was going on. so you can actually see the full picture and actually decide on whether Icebergs is worthy of a ban or not. But just to make sure, Ice is guilty of the art, so that is worthy of a ban. So while I was having this very normal conversation with Blockhead, another moderator, Slugger, had to come in and fuck up everything because that's the only thing she can do for this community. And after I got in an argument with Slugger, seeing how her defense of Icebergs was complete bullshit, I got a ban from the TC2 Discord server. What could have Slugger possibly have said to defend Icebergs? Well, don't worry. I recorded the entire conversation. Hear what Slugger had to say in defense of Icebergs.
You say this like it was a valid reason to make the doc in the first place. Most if not all of the things were private shit, bro. None of this shit was shared publicly prior in any capacity.
Now this already is a terrible, terrible point. Only because the conversations that were taking place are private doesn't mean that Icebergs had the freedom to show Icy vor art and also sex them. If we take into consideration that the conversations were indeed private, then that would mean that most of the people that were exposed for being groomers would be proven innocent because the conversations were taken privately. This is not a good point whatsoever, and I hope I've made it very clear that Slugger is very biased. So when I pointed out that it doesn't matter that the conversations were private, all she had to say is,
"You're so unironically unaware."
Unironically unaware of what, Slugger? Only because the conversations were private doesn't make the person guilt-free. If that would be the case, then people that were exposed this year like Notive are completely guilt-free, because after all, the conversations were private.
Do you not realize that these private conversations are not incriminating in any way, shape, or form, and are purposefully cropped to make the other party look bad, simply for the sole purpose of being petty and nothing more?
What was cropped to make the other party look bad? The conversations are pretty much in the open. I don't think anything was cropped. The only thing that was ever cropped in the document were some of the vor images. You would have known this if it wasn't for the fact that you're a fucking douchebag and you're pretending that I'm illiterate, even though I read the document multiple times. Also, it's ironic how you call me illiterate, yet you ignored the fact that I read the document myself and the question about Ice drawing vor isn't incriminating in any way. You're fucking killing it, Slugger. Keep it going. You're showing the greatness of the TC2 community.
I genuinely can't comprehend that this is going over your head.
I genuinely cannot comprehend how saying that the conversations were private and asking me constantly if I read the document is good as defense for Iceberg. If this is how you take a situation like Iceberg's, I can't even imagine what your take on Sand Under Table is.
Now, guys, you don't get it. Sand Under Table is completely innocent because the conversation that he did with Clem were completely private. It's Clem's fault that she decided to make it public because she's petty.
I'd also like to point out that while Slugger was doing this whole conversation, she was so brave that she was staying in a private VC that is usually unavailable unless you're a longtime member. That goes to show how much of a brave person Slugger is. She could have literally just go into one of the public VCs and actually have a comprehensive conversation with me, but instead she decided to try to dunk on me and ban me from the server. Because that's what a TC2 moderator should do, baby! Woo! Let's go, Slugger! You're goated! After this whole observation and how everything happened, I think it's finally time to reach a final verdict. Despite the fact of what the longtime members and the moderators might tell you, Iceberg is at the very least guilty of making vor art of one of her friends in a non-consensual manner. In case you didn't know this already, these inappropriate conversations are enough to get someone banned from the TC2 Discord server, as we've seen from the initial ban of Iceberg and also from the ban of Sand Under Table that was made last year. So let's answer the main question. Why was Ice unbanned? If we banned Sand from having inappropriate conversations with a minor and seeing how Ice's actions are pretty much worse than what Sand did, why is she getting a pass? Well, it's actually really simple. Icebergs is a longtime member. He's a veteran player, and if you have the green rank on your name, that means that you're basically immune to any rule that has ever been made in the TC2 Discord server. Now you might say, that's a pretty weird theory to have danced. Well, it would seem weird if you didn't actually see the document and how the moderators themselves tried to defend Icebergs. Their points are so fucking bad and so biased that if I were to tell someone that they were trolling, they would probably believe it. But since they have a very high rank and they're the moderators of the server, other people will try to side with them, not because they agree, but they simply don't want to get banned. This is a very big problem and definitely a situation where our community is corrupted. Because if we make the objective opinion that Icebergs did nothing wrong and that he's innocent, we're not only lying straight to our faces, but from the perspective of an outsider, we might seem like we're actively defending someone who drew vor art. And I don't know about you, but I don't think that this community should go in this direction. So I'm going to be asking all of you guys a favor. A favor that in my opinion can actually help us improve our community to be a much better place. I'm not going to be asking Slugger for an apology, because I pretty much made my opinion that Slugger is an egocentric piece of shit that shouldn't deserve to have such a high role as the moderator because she's very irresponsible and childish. But I'm gonna be asking you guys to make our voice heard that we don't want to accept someone that made fetish art. So, all I'm gonna be asking is for you guys to say one thing and one thing only. Keep Ice banned.